the Redlining podcast. This is our inaugural podcast, our very first one that is going on our YouTube channel for those who don't know. And in our very first podcast, we've got the wonderful NILA, aka Nick Cavendish. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And to my right, who is going to be my cohort in many of these podcasts. In fact, you're going to see a lot more of Mr. Richard Parker. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you very much. Before we start, I've been calling you NILA. Now, am I the only man on the planet that calls you NILA? It is NILA, right?
Well, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, you're not the only one. No, I'll tell you the story about that. Actually, I'm not particularly inventive with words at all, really. And, DJ name, whatever. My first daughter was called Isla. My name's Nick in NILA. Yeah, simple. That was really
easy.
There was no depth to it at all. So the reason I say that I pronounce it NILA because my daughter's name's Isla. But could be Neela, could be Nilla. I don't know, whatever.
NILA works. I don't know what. I mean, when you say Neela, you'd expect to have an E in it, right? So
maybe, but
I don't know.
I think a lot of Kiwis actually pronounce it Nila or Neela.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Neela I think is what a lot of people.
And obviously, you're not Kiwi. Where are you from?
Edinburgh initially, but I've been here for 16 years now. So.
Which is exactly why I wore the provocative England shirt.
I did pick up on that. I haven't followed football for ages, and there's been a reason for that.
Were they even in the World Cup this year?
I don't know, probably not.
Have they ever been in the World Cup? Yes, they have.
Okay, have we settled on? Is it Nyla or Neela?
Go Nyla, why not?
Nyla.
Yeah.
I always just call you Nick.
Yeah, or Nick will do. That is my name.
Nick's good.
So, sure.
So, Nick, how long have you been in New Zealand for? And tell us about your DJing here.
I've been here since 2007. I moved here. Yep. And I actually took a bit of a hiatus from DJing. I DJed a lot in the UK for quite an extended period of time. I'm a bit like you two. I'm quite old, so been about, seen the wash a few times.
What are you saying?
So I kind of stopped music completely altogether, and it wasn't until about 2014 I started DJing again. But I'd picked up sort of on production again from about 2008. Like I bought like a MIDI keyboard and I had like Logic and was tinkering around. Nothing really that great came out of that at all, really. But so you naturally like produce more, get back into listening to music and wanting to DJ again. And then of course with like a lot of software these days, you can DJ using like Traktor, Serato, all these things. So the expense of getting decks wasn't there anymore, which is good. So I got back into it, bought the program, and it's a bit of a hustle trying to get some gigs. I guess it's still very slow for me, like to be honest, like many, but. I've had a few, played at most of the festivals here, and a few club nights here and there. But it's not been a very regular thing, I guess.
Production's more your thing, right? Though, isn't it?
No.
You wouldn't?
Well, like here's the thing: I've been DJing 30 years with the break in between. I started playing when I was 16, 92, whatever it was, 95, 92, something like that. Anyway, a while back. So. Yeah, I've been DJing a lot longer than I've been producing. I dabbled with it in the UK, but I think I had one synth and like a cracked version of Logic when it was still on PC before it came, like Apple brought it over. But I didn't really do much. I knew some friends that were producing quite a bit.
So what's the difference between, just for newbie people, and the majority of people who hear this are going to know exactly what the difference is. What's the major difference between DJing and producing? Is it the live aspect or?
Well, that's a bit of a blur now, I guess, because it's getting closer. Like traditionally, producing is making the actual music that you hear. DJing is playing the music that somebody else has made, I guess. But I think of DJing as sure you're playing other music, but it really depends on the style of music you're playing and type of genre and stuff. But certainly the stuff I play is a lot of it's about making another track out of two or more tracks playing at once, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's like the blending of sounds rather than just playing a record and in the next one. But then you've got hip hop and they scratch. It's a big part of their kind of DJing as well. So it's really dependent on the genre. But the main difference is one's made in the studio using variety of different equipment or like software, and the other is just actually playing the music that's already been made in the studio.
How would you describe your style?
So I would, without pigeonholing myself, like I guess a lot of people maybe think of me as a progressive house DJ, but which is kind of true. But I feel progressive is more of a way of playing rather than a style of music. Like if you look at the genre itself, it's, you know, it ranges from really deep kind of, I guess almost organic daytime stuff right up to kind of quite driving progressive techno. So I think there's a really wide spectrum, and that's why I like it so much. It's kind of quite varied. So I think it's more of a way of playing, like you progress through your set rather than just playing a particular sound, if that makes sense.
From the start of when you DJ'd, was because the progressive house era of like the 90s, the late 90s was massive, especially in the UK. Is that where some of your main influences came from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think when I started. I was around about 92. I moved into a friend's house and he had a set of Technics, so I was quite lucky. I got to play on the real McCoy quite early.
Not the belt-driven ones.
Well, I had some friends. I never had my own decks for quite a while, but I had some mates that had belt-drivens. But then when I moved in, my mate of mine, bless his soul, Donny, he had a set of Technics, and it really accelerated your learning. Like, you know, playing on something, I guess, learning to play guitar on a good guitar versus playing on a crappy thing that you're going to probably get a bit better quicker. But no, when I started, I was kind of into, I say this like with caution, I was into trance, not the trance that was in the sort of early 90s. I'm talking about like sort of Dave Angels, Finn Vath, Westbam, like quite, it was transy music. It put you into a trance, really hypnotic, none of this sort of really like obvious melodies. It was quite a different kind of sound to what trance became, I guess. And then techno was the sort of next, like, you know, think of people like Robert Armani, Jeff Mills, Derek May, Cal Cox, all these sort of artists that were playing that kind of sound. So I kind of went in a bit of a circle with music, I guess, but like it was quite heavy at the start. Like I even played gabber at one point, which is like ridiculous.
At an event.
Yeah, like I went hard out on gabber for quite a while, like Lenny D, Joey Beltram, 150 BPM or whatever. It was ridiculous. Like I couldn't barely even think about listening to that now. And then I got into it was more psych trance actually back then. Yeah. It was a mix that came out on Radio 1. There was a couple of mixes that really changed the sort of music I got into. But it was one by Justin Robertson and another by Paul Oakenfold, just because he was sort of breaking like the DJ world. It's actually mixing wise, questionable, but his music, like the stuff that was on that mix of the Paul Oakenfold Go mix, I think it was called. Yeah. Was just incredible. It kind of just, I was like, wow, what is this stuff? And that was really my first step towards progressive house, progressive music. It just had this thing about it evolved and changed and wasn't the same the whole way through. And that really kind of interested me, I guess, kind of. So
when you first started creating music, so when you're learning to play guitar, you can pick up a crappy guitar or ukulele or something, and you can play and you can play a tune and it sounds good and it comes across. But then when you start picking up the really nice guitars, as you get better, you understand the difference in the sound. When you're learning to DJ or mix music or anything like that, is the equipment you use important to start with, or can you get away with a lot less?
I think it is. Like, as I say, I was quite lucky. I got exposed to playing on Technics quite early, and it was very different. I mean, the belt-driven drive, just to explain what that is, I guess one's on a belt. So when you change the speed, the pitch of the turntable actually takes time to accelerate. So it winds up and speeds up and then slows down really slowly. Whereas with the Technics, I think they run on a magnet. So when you change the pitch, it's almost instant. Like there's it feels faster and a bit more precise. But it's actually once you get to grips with the speed, it's actually a lot easier to control because you've not got this sort of wonky kind of bending speed. Like it's at that speed and it just sticks. So yeah, to come back, I think you learn better using better equipment. I think within 6 months I was kind of beat matching pretty well. Like it was at the point I feel I could actually mix. Cool. Yeah. And
was there a definite time when, judging on our ages here, was there a definite time where things went from an analog format to I'm thinking LPs, to digital, and when was that? And what was the big change?
I can't remember the dates, but I do remember when, because I played at most of the clubs in Edinburgh and, some in Glasgow and stuff, and there was suddenly this big shift when Pioneer brought out the CDJs, and I was like, that's not DJing, that's pushing buttons, and I was like loathed. I thought, how dare you? Like what is that? And as time's moved on, I got with the flow. It's a lot easier carrying a wallet of CDs versus 2 big boxes of records that were a pain in the ass to carry. So there was I can't remember when that was, but I remember there being a definite. Like most clubs actually had both at that point. I remember they still had vinyl. They had the option for both. It was like 2 CDJs and 2 turntables usually. But I swear by digital now. It's what you do with it in the end, I think, is kind of sure.
Yeah. Have you still got your vinyl collection? Or?
No. So I got completely ripped off of that, actually. That was a so-called mate back in the UK, and I went off travelling for a couple of years and went around various places in Asia and whatnot. And then when I came back, I was off again, but I sold them, both my decks, and I don't know how many records, boxes of them. It wasn't fair. It was like 350 quid or something. And then I still never got the money. I never ever got paid. He bumped me. I was like, you fucking kidding me? He was supposed to be, he just fucked off. And I tried for ages to get in touch with him, just complete blanked me. And then, of course, I left the country. So it was just like, cool.
Did you digitise them at all?
No.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, there was there was a lot of records.
Yeah.
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
But I was a mixer as well, actually. It was a Vestax mixer. I was a bit annoyed about that, to be honest, but
So what made your decision to come to New Zealand? And when you came to New Zealand, obviously it wasn't for music. What made you sort of get back into the music when you were here?
I don't know. I don't know why I sort of ditched it for so long. I think I got when I left the UK, I went travelling, and without going into big stories, I moved here to be with my now ex-wife, but
It's a woman. I knew it.
Yeah.
Always a woman. You always follow them.
Right. I spent a bit of traveling, in working in Thailand, diving and whatnot, and filming, and so she didn't want to stay in Scotland, and I was like, cool, I'm quite happy to leave Scotland. It's a bit cold.
Just a bit.
Came here, yeah, totally right. So I came here, and then I don't know, I just felt this urge. I had a mate actually from Edinburgh who was out here for a bit, and I used to DJ with him actually in the UK, and he was like, let me hear this guy. It was a Guy J mix, one of his first one. I think it was it was one of the first DJs I heard since I got back into music, because I hadn't heard for ages. And what blew me away was just every track on it was his own. I was like, wow, he's playing a whole mix of just his own music. That's amazing. That's really cool. That's kind of really, that's the limit. If you can play a whole set of just your music. I mean, I don't know. It's a bit mixed with that. I think I'd get a bit bored if I did that all the time. But it really appealed to me. After listening to that CD, I was hooked on progressive again. I spent quite a bit of time trying to get used to the music again. I was lost touch with labels and artists, who was current, who was not.
Did you buy yourself some gear here? So did you buy some CDJs or a controller or anything?
No, I had a controller. I got Tractor. That was because it was cheap. Bought Tractor, and I think I had an X1 controller, which is a little button control. I think hit buttons, but
Yeah.
Beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, right. But actually, Tractor is I really like the software. It's equal to Serato in many ways, and it just happened to be the first one I came across. So I got into that, and I went through a variety of different controllers to try and map stuff and make things work, and eventually I've got CDJs now again after many years, but just my preferred format is really I got sick of turning up to gigs with your controller, your mixer, because I used to use a Alan Heath DB4, which is because I had USB sound card on it, you could plug your computer straight in. And then, of course, you've got to get your computer. It's just a pain in the ass carrying all that crap about with you. So, nice USB, bang, and off you go.
The other thing is when you're sort of changing over from another DJ, if you've got a big controller, you have to, during their last song or whatever it is, you got to like unplug stuff and
Kinda
like plug it all back in and shove equipment along, and then it's just a bit of a pain rather than just chucking a
like
USB in.
Awkward etiquette, right?
Yeah,
like,
it
what do you
is.
do? When do you say, excuse me, can I just like completely interrupt what you're doing and plug in? Is that right? Kind of.
Yeah, and like a small DJ booth as well. You got nowhere to put it, and it's much easier with the USB. So you came here in 2007. What did you think of the New Zealand electronic music scene when you got here?
It was, I wasn't out a huge amount, so I can't really comment on like all the clubs. I think I went to Inc. a bunch of times, and I felt that the music was certainly, it hadn't changed much from what I remember hearing in the UK, but I mean, that's maybe just symptomatic of being New Zealand, being further away, and I guess the UK having like a long history of dance music, and so it wasn't really a surprise, but it was definitely, I think from memory, it was more on a sort of tech house kind of vibe-ish when I got here. I think, could be wrong then, but it certainly wasn't progressive, and I remember trying to push that sound to a number of people, and was met with a lot of, not so much friction, but just like, nah, we're not into that kind of thing. The whole world likes it now. Like, sorry. But they do.
Is there a big difference between electronic music from Britain and Europe compared to the States?
I think it's an interesting point. I was wondering if you're going to bring that up later on, but I think that's one of the things that's missing here is there's not like a New Zealand sound. Like certainly when I was DJing in the UK, I remember, especially in the techno sort of vibe, there was the Frankfurt sound or the Berlin sound or the Chicago sound. And there's a reason they had these labels, is because they were like, it was music that was made by local people from that scene that had whatever cultural background and influences that kind of shaped that sound. And I think there's definitely a UK sound. There's definitely a UK sound. America went down this, I mean, they've had some amazing artists from, Deep Dish, and who else was on my mind there? Jimmy Van M, a whole bunch of big progressive artists, and of course Sasha and Digweed used to go out there quite a lot. But then there was a whole EDM monster market by like massive CEO companies just monetizing the whole music industry. So like I don't know, I can't really comment now because I've never actually been to the States, so I'm gonna go by what I remember hearing coming out. But like early when I started playing dance music, like America was amazing for techno. Like it was some really good techno, really good. I heard Jeff Mills was one. There was stuff he was coming out with just like so far ahead of its time. You could almost play some of it now. Like when you hear people going, "There's this new techno about," you're like, "It's not really that new. Sorry, like it's kind of not." But I always found that music did this sort of wheel thing. It'd go round, it'd go techno, then go trance, then go disco, and come back round. And every time you'd pick up a bit of the last one and just sort of morph a bit. That's kind of slowed down a bit, I guess, that wheel. But
have you found some of the influences growing in New Zealand for certain music, especially maybe progressive house, with the influx of quite a lot of South Americans coming in? Because obviously progressive house is really popular in South America.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. And I don't think it's just because South Americans are into it. I think, it's kind of like people from Europe, and there's just a bigger history there of that kind of music. So it's not really a surprise that there's a big, I mean, there might be a big drum and bass scene there. I don't know, in Argentina, but I think there's a few groups of people and promoters now that are like really pushing the progressive sound, and they're doing well, and they're getting a lot of like positive feedback and support from people that aren't Argentinian as well, obviously locals. And again, that doesn't really surprise me. Like, progressive music or way of playing that particular type of music is kind of like it's all over the world. Like, we're not all that different, surely. And I think what I'm getting at is if people like it in, Timbuktu, why wouldn't they like it here? Like, there's no... Sure, you're going to get people that dislike it, sure, but there's going to be people that like it too.
I think with the scene over here is that, what I find is that people kind of our age or maybe a little bit younger or a little bit older are kind of into that kind of 4/4 beat house music, progressive house, techno. and the younger generation are all sort of going towards drum and bass. So you're not really getting any new blood into the kind of music that we play. So it's more about kind of educating the young people. But how do you do that? You can put events on in clubs, but I don't know. I find it's quite difficult to do.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Like the youth of today or tomorrow's punter. Like you look at most sort of progressive artists, are all sort of middle-aged men. Like like been around and they're still clinging on to their youth, going, don't want to let it go. I mean, generally the music. I still maintain. I think the music is good, but there's definitely there's an older clientele that are kind of attached to that scene, and I think. I was young once, and I liked it when I was young, and other people liked it when they were young, and that's why they still like it, right? It's kind of so. I don't think it's that indifferent. I think there's definitely an education problem, and that could simply just be because there's not enough clubs and venues playing that. Like, I don't mean just people playing a particular type of music. I mean people that are playing at a high caliber, delivering high production events that are like, it doesn't have to be like over the top production, but just like really good sound. Sound is, especially with this type of music, it's like, it's really atmospheric, it's really warm, lots of melody, and if a sound system is really harsh and doesn't have that warmth in the bottom end and it's not punchy enough, you'd really lose that feeling of the music. Like it's kind of essential to that type of music. It's all about the feeling. And I think, if there were more places that played that had like quality venues with good systems, then that wouldn't be a hard thing to educate people, because I think people would just naturally be like, oh, what's this? Check it out and go, that was really good. Like, no shit.
Yeah, I agree. So just sort of before we go into the lockdown, because obviously it's a subject that we talk about at Redlining. What was your kind of involvement in the scene? Building up to the pandemic. Were you busy? Were you gigging a lot? Were you producing music?
Bits of both. Had some fairly. Yeah, I was busy in the studio, and from recollection, I had quite a good gig that was lined up that didn't go ahead. I think I was going to be closing for Guy J, which would have been kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, pretty cool.
But it's really good progressive DJ, and for those who don't know, check him out. He's really good.
Where was that? Was that a festival or?
That was one of Cam's nights. I think. It's Collude, but like it was no real surprise that everything kind of like fell to poo after that. It was kind of inevitable. I think the whole world was just in a shit state, really.
Yeah, we won't sort of go too much into. I don't really want to talk too much about the pandemic, as in, because we're all over it.
Why not?
So we but what I think what we're quite keen about is like, what did you do with your time when you were in during lockdown? Did you keep yourself busy? How mentally did you find it?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like my work, they were really good actually. They were really quick to sort of adapt. And in fact, I think from memory, we went into like a sort of trial working from home, like 2 weeks before actually officially we were locked down, because they had the foresight to see like this is probably going to happen. And yeah, it was kind of quite smooth. It kind of went from everybody working at home to like everybody working in the office, a few teams working at home, and then full on lockdown. So that transition for me was quite smooth, and in some ways I quite liked it. Like I kind of liked the not having to travel. I didn't like being restricted to the house. That was kind of weird. But so yeah, the lockdown, obviously the lack of gigs and the way the general scene had been kind of imploded on itself, that was not cool. But, for obvious reasons, keeping people safe and like, not spreading the virus is, it was a given. It had to happen.
Yeah.
But,
it's all right to do it now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
So I didn't say that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think for me, like I probably wanted to save you. It was kind of, I guess it's kind of funny. You ask any producer and say, "Hey, do you fancy being locked in your studio for 6 months?" Like most of them are going to be like, "Think about that," like. So in that sense, it was actually quite good. It was quite productive for me, and I probably like as a result of that got some of my biggest releases. Well, at the start of getting some really good releases onto some good labels. So, and that was just a case of focusing on like one thing at a time, I guess. And, I'm still working, but
What's your processes in actually producing a track? I always envisage sort of like someone who produces a track, a bit like a writer, right? So they go, right, I'm going to produce a track, and they write the first line, and then they procrastinate for a little bit, and then they'll walk around the room and maybe like tap the pencil on their head, thinking, and then sit back down and go, right, I'm going to produce, and then go and make a coffee or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it depends on the producer. Like, I've heard of many people starting from different areas. I work with a lot of hardware, and the reason I like that is it's quite tactile. So I'll start off with a loop. You know, it could be starting with a rhythm, but quite often I start with like, you know, just a soundscape or some ambience, atmospheric sound that I've made. And then it's just a case of building on stuff. And then, you know, I'll try a bunch of stuff. Some things will sound, yeah, it's kind of all right. And, you know, move it to a different synth or whatever. And then there'll be something that just works. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of, it's got something going. And then it just builds. It's not like I don't have this. In fact, that's a bit of a lie. I was going to say I don't have this idea of what I'm going to make. In fact, when I do have that idea, it always turns out to be shit. So it's like, it's kind of almost better to not have that. Like, I'm going to make something that sounds like X, because it just found that you always try to squash this idea of you have in your head, and you kind of restrict yourself from just allowing something to happen. And that's kind of the beauty with iFrame production, is just like the best stuff I've written has come out really quickly and almost writes itself.
When you sort of go to produce something, obviously, when even in the genre of progressive house, I don't want to categorize you here because you might want to produce something else. But what I'm saying is, when you actually kind of produce electronic music, there's so many things that you can use to make the track, right? There's so many sounds, there's so many effects you can put on it. How do you kind of start with that? I always thought, like, I've sat down once to maybe try and produce a track, and I just I'm completely overwhelmed by all these sounds, noises, atmospheres, beats that you can use. How do you kind of start?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that I do that like probably speed that process up. Like, I have a template. There's a couple of different DAWs on digital audio workstations that I use. Like,
Do you start with Gabber and then work backwards?
Kind of, yeah. I pitch it down using the belt drive table.
Yeah, nailed it.
No, I kind of like I've got a few templates, so you know, I've got like certain drum sounds that I use repeatedly, or it might be some basic sounds that I use quite often. I've got all my synths set up, so I don't have to like set up every time I open the project. That'd just be a pain in the ass. So yeah, the template gets me into place. All I've got on the actual arrangement is a placement of a kick drum and some spaces where the kick drum isn't. So it just gives me like a kind of really rough timeline of where I might work to. And the reason I do that is because I record audio directly from the synths. So I play the synth live. I'll have like a MIDI loop playing and just record the audio straight in. And over time, I modulate it. And that gives it its organic kind of flow. So to come back to your question, I kind of start, could be a number of ways. Like I said, I could start with, I've made this basic groove or rhythm, like using some drums and samples. Or I might just start with like a melodic hook, because that's another thing that you can fold down that trap. You start like, you make this amazing groove, it's really, really cool, and then you're like, it needs a hook, and that, like, trying to fit a hook around something sometimes is really difficult. Like, whereas if you do it the other way around, you've got the golden nugget, and then you just build around the nugget. So that's another way of doing it. Or sometimes I'll start off with some like mad soundscape thing, and just, you know, the atmosphere makes you think, oh, it'd be kind of nice with this kind of sound, or I need something a bit like deeper or darker or fucked up, using some modular stuff. So yeah, it really depends. I don't really have a plan, I guess is what I'm saying. It's just like I play something, and you know, I might play a riff in the keyboard or a bass line and just see what works with a particular synth, and flick through some presets, or start a new sound from scratch or a new patch and see where it goes. And you know, one of the things I do is I don't save until I've got something I think is kind of, so I might spend like an hour just fucking around, and then eventually something like, that's kind of worth keeping, and I'll save that, and then I'll start working on it.
Yeah. Do you? One thing I would say for anyone who wants to see, number one, Nick's setup, but also Nick in action, you do post quite a few videos of you sort of like tinkering with your tinkering with your gear. So I would recommend people go to your Facebook page.
Oh yeah.
And take a look at some of the videos that you post of you actually sort of like trying to find the sound for a specific track, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to suggest go to my website, and because the reason being is like all links are in one place.
Oh, okay.
This is social media for
What's your website?
dgnila.com.
I've actually been on it. I've looked at your biography. Your photo, was it taken by a child?
Or if it was a very small adult, right?
I noticed that. You're like bending down. Like,
He's a good boy.
It's actually a dog.
Right, okay, yeah. It was going down a bit, just gets my eye level. Yeah, okay, we get it there. Mate. I just think it's one of those, like, it's cool, man. It's just one of those classic DJ poses, right?
Like, like it was either that black t-shirt, black background,
or it's like peering distantly off into the horizon.
Moody face. Yeah. It was actually a mate of mine who's actually like quite a solid photographer, like Pix Wayne's Ed, I think he is. But check him out. He's artistically really, really good photographer.
Okay.
The magazine stuff.
Please. Oh, I didn't mean to offend him.
No. I realise it's more the subject is the failure, not the photography. Like.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your website?
dgnila.com.
Yeah, that's NILA, not NILA.
Depends how you want to say it. Yeah. dgnila.com. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Link in the description below. There you go.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah.
When you're making music and you get like that hook or that beat or that sound or that drop, and you've come up with it and you create it and you're happy with it, is that the moment? Would you think to yourself, "Well, the kids are gonna fucking love this"? Can you just imagine them sort of like bouncing?
No. So I've got like a 3-stage process. Like I produce in Ableton, so that's like sound design, selecting sounds, arrangement. Mostly like some basic mixing. Roll off all the low end on things you don't need, and then I export everything as stems, as WAV audio, into Logic, and then I do a mixdown session. And the reason I do that is it kind of separates that continuous tweaking with stuff and changing stuff to really focus in on making the mixes like wide and dynamic and all the good stuff, sort of polish it. And then I export that as a pre-master and then do a mastering session. Yeah. So to come back, by the time I've done that, I'm usually completely bored of the track. Like it's like unless that process has been really quick, I'm just so over it. It's like I just want to write something new. So like it has its process. It has its pros, like separating that process if it's quick. But there was one I did recently, a remix for a label, and I did one mixdown session. I thought, it's all right. Sent it to them. They really liked it, and I was like, I can make that better. Right? And I think I did like 5 versions or something. And I thought, I've nailed it. This is the one. I sent it off to them. They're like, bro, I still really like the first one. And I was like, they were right. It was better, but for some reason, I convinced myself that like doing this millions of times was a thing. So like quite often I'm really bored of it by the time it's finished, unless it writes really quickly. Just because the fun bit for me, I do enjoy mixing, because when you get your mixing hat on, it's a very different. You're thinking about like frequency spectrum and stereo field and depth and stuff. Yeah. But I get a lot more fun and enjoyment out of the creative process, like that accidental flow of kind of like making some sounds, and suddenly you get this like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like these things bounce off each other nicely. And
happy accidents.
Right. Like that's the bit that's kind of.
Do you ever think about like going, right, I'm just going to send this to someone else to mix down, or are you quite precious? Not precious, but you feel that because it's your track, you need to mix it down.
No, I think I mean traditionally, like you think of like, traditional producers would quite often not actually do anything in the studio. They'd be the ones that saying, I like this is good, this will be a good record, this will be crap, get rid of that. And they'd have their engineer doing stuff, and then they'd send it to a mix engineer, then they'd send it to a mastering engineer, because they're all specialists, right, in that area. So, I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time and, I guess, like money on educating myself on mixing and mastering, for good reason, but to like improve my own process. And there was definitely a time I would have sent stuff away, but I feel, I hope anyway, like my mixing has improved, like it's got to a point. Yeah. And I think, getting onto certain labels that really, it just gave me a bit of a confidence boost, like, I'm actually doing this right. Because quite often you're doing stuff and you're like, is this right? I don't really know. Like, you're balancing it against other tracks you're referencing against, and it's quite subjective at times. So Do
you ever create with what you think labels might want, or you're just 100% for you?
I've tried both. The former, there's a few labels I really want to get on still, mainly because I play a lot of their music and I really, really like what they do. And I mean, I like the sound. And 9 times out of 10, when I try and make something that I think will fit that label, it just doesn't sound right. Or you end up copying a sound that's familiar to you, and then of course you're just copying something. So it's kind of, I feel the best stuff just comes like on its own.
Yeah.
And then there's that further stage of after you've finished doing it all, which is that I hate. I've actually got some stuff out at the moment. It's sending out demo, like it's really painful because you could send the same demo to like 10 labels, like over time, and the first 9 like, this is shit, hate it. And there's one that comes out, I love it, and you're like, what? Like, and in your mind, all these labels are at the same sort of level, and they all play similar music, and it's such a subjective thing. Like,
if a label came to you and said, "Look, I love that track, but you thought it was dog shit," would you still send it to them?
ooh, that's a good question. I guess it depends on the exposure of the label, right? If it's something that I guess would help me as an artist, then it'd probably be a silly thing to say no, right?
Technically, the track could be perfect, but it's just like you just don't like it. You know?
I mean, there's been elements of it. There's been a few labels that, and there's no like dig at labels. It's just the way it is. That many of the bigger labels, they just get so many demos, like literally on a weekly basis. They must get hundreds, if not thousands, of tracks. Some of them really good, some of them absolute dog shit. Like going through that would be painful. Like listening to every line could just be really tiring. So I get it, and their release schedule. You think they might, if they only did a release every month, it's 12 EPs a month. Some might do a few more. It doesn't take long for their like backlog to get completely wiped out. Like I had a couple of bigger labels, and I waited for like a year and a half on one of them, and about 9 months on another. Like they were good releases for me, so I was quite happy to wait that. But
do you think there's some lackey at the label that sort of filters out a lot of this shit? Because like you say, there must be a lot of shit that gets sent to them. So there's some guy who's just like filtering out tracks and picking out ones to give to the head honchos to go, actually, you ought to listen to this. I
think there's a combination of that, and probably if you're known to them, like building that network is quite important.
Exactly,
like you're likely to listen to something that's from somebody you know versus somebody you've never come across before. But to come back to, there's definitely been releases I've put out. Not so much the last couple of years. I've been a bit more careful, but I went through a stage of just making stuff and having this thing about I want to release it, and I listened back to some of those, and it's like probably shouldn't. I mean, it was all right, but it's not like, it's definitely not something I would play.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
which is kind of like, you think, well, why did you release it? And I'm like, because I put the time and effort into it. So you just sort of self-justify it to yourself, right? But more recently, I've been trying to like I finish a track. First thing is, do I like it? And if it's the answer is yes, then would I play it? And that can be a really like, if I'm not going to play it, then, well, who else is going to play it for a start? But like, if it's not in line with what I play, is really any point? Although I have been making some down-tempo stuff, which I quite enjoy, which is different. That's a different kind of production and different reasoning.
Yep.
So what are some of the labels that you release on at the moment? Because there's some nice European labels that you release on.
So I guess the first main one that I got on way back was a label based in the UK called Proby Tech, and they've been doing some really good stuff over the years, and I think they should really get some more credit than what they've been given. And then that's starting to come. They've had some big artists on. They've had Dave Seaman, Hernan Cattaneo, Quiver, I think, or definitely Tilt, a whole bunch of stuff anyway. But so that was probably the first label that got me on their books. And I think when you're on one label, getting onto another label makes it it's like a stepping stone thing. And I released on a bunch of other labels after that. But then the main significant one after that was Celador, which is run by Dave Seaman and Steve Parry. Label I've been playing their music for pretty much since it started. I think it was 2013 or something. Can't remember now. But
you've done a couple of mixes for them too, right?
Yeah, I did one. I did like a podcast thing for it. I was in line with the release that was coming through, so did that. Then after Celador, there was, forget the order of it now, but it was like Balance, another label I've been a massive fan of over the years. Resound, Vapor, more recently Sprout, and some others that I've just been told will get signed off on, but I can't really say yet. And yeah, there's a bunch in the pipeline as well. So I've been trying to be a bit more like deliberate with who and when I release now. Like I think you have this. It's funny. You have this like, I don't know. You feel like you spend the time doing something, so like, you must release it. Otherwise, you've just wasted your time. And then, like, I mean, I get that, but actually, you probably should just not release it. Like,
Well, surely it's a quality over quantity type thing, right? You know, just because you're quite prolific in what you produce, not necessarily everything needs to be released. Not necessarily everything is of the quality to be released, although I'm sure it is. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's definitely, I mean, that's with anything, right? You know.
Well, I've had a few, like, I've been quite lucky. I've had people like Anthony Papa, he's a champion. That guy is really cool. You know, massive on the scene, has been really influential. I remember hearing him years and years ago. I always thought he was American as well, funnily enough.
Do you know what? I did as well.
Like,
I think it was from because
the
he
new,
was
the new breed.
the new breed Global Underground, wasn't
that's
it?
right.
Yeah, I assumed
For
he was
some
American
reason,
too.
he laughed and I told him that. But I was like, I always thought you were American for some reason. But anyway, he's been great. He's been a really good soundboard. One, like, you know, I like the stuff he plays. Technically, he's a really good DJ and producer as well in his own right. And, you know, I've been sending him stuff for quite a while. And much of the time it was like, up until more recently, but for quite a few years, it's like, it's good. It's good. You know, there's a lot of good music out there. It's good. But it's not great. And, like, that's the difference between, like, whether somebody like him would play it is like, is it really good or is it just good? And I think that's the real difference. That's the real push of kind of like, should I release this track? Is it really good enough for somebody to play? And like more recently, he's been really supportive. He's played quite a lot of my music a lot. And
How does that make you feel?
More, I guess it's like confirmation, right? It's like, yeah, I'm delivering something of a standard that's kind of, you know, it's at the right level. Like I say, I quite often get bored of the stuff I've made by the time I've listened to it for I don't know how many hours, but so when you get somebody out externally saying, yeah, they're validating that, saying, yeah, I would play this, then that's good enough for me. Like, it's almost pointless making something if nobody's going to play it, right? Like, what's the point? Like, I might as well just play it to myself. Yeah. Like,
so question: Where's he from?
Who?
It's from Melbourne. It's from Melbourne.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you should. Yeah.
You go, oh, I'm like, okay, he's not American.
You got to guess.
Good story.
It's funny, right? I thought I'd leave it to the end. No, but yeah, I don't know why I thought that. I don't know why. I guess I thought maybe Newbury. Maybe I thought Global Underground was American. I don't know what it was, but definitely didn't.
They're British, aren't they?
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah.
Is there a lot coming out of Aussie in general?
I was going to say, like, yeah, probably the two countries that are really on form at the moment for progressive house are Argentina. Scene's incredible over there. And Australia. Like, there's a bunch of amazing labels out there that I think I've consistently been playing their music. They're not just good because I'm playing the music. They're just music is really, really good.
Yeah.
And they've had lots of really good, renowned progressive artists on their labels. You know, Balance is one, Meanwhile is another one, Late Night Music's another one, Vapor's another one. There's endless, and the scene's quite healthy over there from what I gather. Like, yeah, Australia is definitely good. They just did a Soundgarden party with Nick Warren and Catania, and that was insane by the looks of it. Yeah, Oz be a place to go one day. From a boomerang.
Is it like the old days? Like it matters where you are. Like back in the old days, like split ends and all that sort of stuff. Talking, you know, rock music and all that. To be any good, you had to go to Australia, and then hopefully you go on to Europe or America. Yeah. Does that matter now?
I think in some ways it does, but I don't know, the bit that interests me is I feel that there's, like I touched on this earlier, like there's no reason New Zealand couldn't have its own sound or be like, you know, when people say, oh, it's got that New Zealand thing or that New Zealand vibe, like, or that Auckland vibe, whatever it is, that I don't see why that couldn't be. Like, I've heard people say, oh, there's only 1 million people here. There's like 500,000 people in Edinburgh or something. Like, what? Like, numbers.
With rap music, like New Zealand hip hop's very distinctive now.
Oh, sure.
And you can hear all the influences from, you know, both sides of both coasts in the in America, and even some of the UK sounding stuff.
Catch a Fire and stuff, right?
Yeah. But then they really found their own thing, and they added a little bit of their dub and a little bit of their reggae and a little bit of their sound and our accent, and they actually embraced the accent instead of going full American all the time.
And that's the kind of thing, that's what I mean. I think I can't see why that couldn't happen here with other genres of music, right? That's the same reason.
Oh, very cool.
But yeah, I don't know. I forgot what your question was. Did you ask me?
I think we were talking about labels. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I got another question.
Yeah, good. I'd asked me where the music came from Australia. Was it any good? That was it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Cheers. So redlining, we commissioned you to produce an original score for our documentary that we produced, and we had this idea for a documentary, which is still kind of in the pipeline, but we wanted to create a trailer. So we came to you and asked you to create, like a soundtrack for it, a score. I sent you the kind of cut without music. How did you go about producing the music? How did you get the feeling for, the mood, and how did you start on it? Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
In a very roundabout, long-winded way.
It's funny because like film score is something I've always wanted to try. Like, some really good artists like Junkie XL, one that comes off the top of my head. He's made a whole career out of it. Worked with Hans Zimmer and whatnot. But so it was always something that I thought that'd be really cool to do something, or even sound Foley, whatever it might be. It'd be kind of interesting way to work. But like you'd sent me the MP4 of the video and the voiceover, and I think from when we started, I initially asked you could give me a timeline of where the emotive or what types of emotions you wanted at each part, like whether it was high energy or dark and moody or whatever it might be. So that was really helpful because it gave me just markers, and as opposed to just like picking some stuff out of a library I've made, it was kind of nice to say, right, okay, so I want this mood starts at 3 minutes 45 and it ends at 7 minutes whatever. So I've got, how many minutes is that? I've got 3 minutes, whatever it was, to make something in that timeline. And so I broke each section out into its own track, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you find that obviously the emotions of what people were talking about, if you haven't seen the brand video, you need to go to our YouTube page, Redlining NZ. Good plug. You should already be there because they should be watching this. Right? So yeah, finish this and then watch it.
Watch the trailer.
But finish this first. So yeah, I digress. So is it easier to kind of get the emotion of producing music for something that's kind of there in front of you? You've got the emotions of what people are talking about. They're very passionate about it. There's kind of ups and downs in the video. It kind of starts on and up, and then it goes into sort of talking about the pandemic, where people's emotions are quite raw, and then it goes on and up again. So compare that to sort of just producing a track. You've got kind of a starter.
Yeah, like I was saying, that the backbone of where the emotional points were triggered, if you like, for a better term, was really useful, because then you could look from that point and listen to the interview content and go, I'm feeling quite sad and emotive here, and like lost, or like hopeless, that kind of thing, and that helps you think, oh, what kind of sounds trigger that kind of response in me, and that's how I sort of built that up. Like, and at like the start, you wanted something that was quite energetic and like club focused, and again, I didn't find that difficult. I actually found that quite useful. It was like quite an easy way to work, and you give yourself that parameter of time. So you've got like X to Y time, and you've got to make particular emotion in that time.
But also you've got to transition between the ups and downs, right?
Yeah, but that to me, like, I guess being a DJ, like that again is quite a natural thing. Sure, you're mixing completely different sounds, but you've got soundscapes and effects and stuff that you can kind of wash stuff out with. So that to me I actually quite enjoyed that part, like the stitching.
But all music's in a sense is emotional manipulation, though, isn't it?
Right.
Like whether you're a DJ or you're producing DJ music, or you're doing film scores are a more obvious one, because you are such a big part of the narrative of what you're doing. So going forward, is this something that you would definitely like to dig in much more?
Yeah, like I always remember, like I spent quite a bit of time in the dive industry, like filming, like underwater photography, and I used to do this thing. I'd film the clients that were, and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to buy a video," and I don't want to spend money on. And of course, at the end of it, they wanted to buy it. They'd see them saying, "Wow, that's amazing!" But I always used to start off with this like trailer that I'd made, and it was very deliberate. It was actually the same clip of some sharks swimming, and the first clip was like really scary music, and you could see people going, "Oh, it's sharks," and then later on, I'd do the very same clip, but with like this. and people were like, oh, that's beautiful. Like, it's the same clip. It's like the only thing that was different was the music. So the music and visual obviously has like a lot of connection, and it fascinates me actually. There's a whole thing with like, you know, psychedelic mental health and certain music. This guy called John Hopkins, check him out if you haven't. He's an incredible artist, but he's gone quite deep on that and like how sound can affect the mind and stuff and memory, and it's fascinating really. Like I think without, like if you watched the film just stripped out the music, it's kind of odd. Like it's weird. It's just it doesn't have that emotional content anymore. Even they're talking about the same thing, but
So who would be some of the inspirations that you would say you've got in terms of
for just general music, or
no, just sticking with the film scoring thing. If you would head down that direction, what's the sort of thing? Junkie XL you mentioned.
Yeah, Junkie XL, John Hopkins, Nils Fram, another one, amazing artist. Saw him here actually when he came over. Who else? Can't think of who put him on the spot now.
Massive Attack did a couple. They did some good ones.
I think they did. Yeah.
They did Danny the Dog, which was
was that him? Okay.
that was good. Yeah, that was a good one.
There's another guy called, I can never remember his name. Olaf something or other. I can't remember. Plays like, so it's like a mixture of like classical and electronic stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really emotive stuff. Like really kind of like, oh, my heart. But he really gets that emotion across, and they do a lot of film score, I think. But it's, I don't know. I think the sort of the mixture of electronic stuff with organic and acoustic instruments is quite interesting, I think. So
I have to say that the one composer is probably my favourite is John Carpenter.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
a
yeah,
massive
sure, yeah,
John
yeah.
Carpenter fan anyway from his films, but his scores, they're so unique. I know a lot of them are done in the 80s and everything, and Halloween late 70s, but you know you're watching a John Carpenter film when you hear his soundtrack. And he plays live now. He goes around touring the States with his band, playing his soundtracks.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I wish he'd come
Check it out.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
I saw Hans Zimmer here a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
I would
That'd be
say,
amazing.
without a word of a lie, that is probably the greatest musical thing I've ever been to. in my life.
Yeah.
But then
I'm not
I'm a
surprised.
film buff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just him and the music, it was the orchestra he had. He had the musicians that played in the actual recordings of The Rock, Armageddon, Pirates of the Caribbean, all that sort of stuff. And holy shit, that was next level.
And it's fun. I've seen some clips of interviews when he just makes it sound so simple. He's like, question, answer. And you're like, well, why is it not that simple? But it's like, he's just incredibly talented.
One day and I come up with the idea and it's like that's all it was. It's funny.
It's like these notes, like da da da, and da da da. There you go.
Job done.
Or he'll just go, and that was it for me. It was perfect. Dark Knight, yes.
Next level, really, just unbelievably talented. So I mean, that's a bit of a pipe dream. Maybe I'd never. I mean, I'm not like classically trained. I can bash out some guitars on the guitar, and I can play keyboard pretty badly. But
But again, like producing music as you are now, it is an emotional manipulation. So it's not a fast step, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess so. And I mean, like with the computers, you don't have to be. I can play strings and like piano stuff. I actually did something recently with something similar, and I don't actually have to be able to play in that way because I can use computers to neaten it up a bit, for a better word. But it's still having that. Like I understand how scales and modes and chords work together, so I've got a basic understanding of music, I guess, which helps.
Would you consider or have you thought about producing some production music for video? Because obviously there's websites that have a whole heap of production music libraries on them.
Is in like stock stuff, you mean?
Yeah, I mean that is, I have to say, like alarm bells already ring when you say that word and you go, fucking hell, some of these are really shit. Well, but actually some of them are pretty well produced now.
Yeah.
We obviously have heard quite a few in our time, when we produce videos, but there is some quite good quality out there.
I'm sure there is, and I think there's definitely merit there. I think to come back to like working for you guys on that score, I think it makes it more connected when you're actually like making something to fit something else versus just making some random music and then picking music that you think kind of fits this vibe. I mean, sure, that can work too, if you select it well, but it's just something I mean, like things like timing and I don't know, I feel it's probably easier to do it the other way around, like because the visual content sort of triggers the emotion of what you might get from the film that you're watching, or the dialogue, whatever it might be, and I think that's a bit easier to sometimes create I don't know, if somebody's crying, you're not going to play Jingle Bell. You know what I mean? Like it's quite an obvious thing. You kind of play something sort of melancholic and kind of like. Well, it depends on the type of person.
What mood
right?
I was thinking maybe the Benny Hill soundtrack. Or
Sure,
something,
right.
Yeah.
You get it, right?
Yeah. I think I've been tempted to do that in the past, just for a laugh.
Yeah.
But I think as an
Juxtapose.
yeah, exactly.
Actually, funny. I remember being in Thailand, and it was like fairly recently after the tsunami hit. I was there. Well, luckily, I was on the other side, and there was all these. I remember there was all these like strange captures of footage of like the tsunami happening and like wiping out areas, and they had this like really happy music. I just couldn't understand. Like it was like you play it on the bus. You'd be on a bus trip to wherever to get your visa stamp. And you see this foot, and you're like, Jesus, that's really heavy. And they'd have this like really happy music, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, can they not hear that? Like, I don't know what it was. It was really strange. It was almost like when you said juxtaposition, it was exactly that. It was like, huh?
Carnage 2, somewhere over the rainbow.
Yeah, pretty much, right? It was like very, very strange. I don't know if that was just their sort of take on like, life's life and get on with it, or I don't know. Very odd. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
It was funny.
It's an interesting point. I mean, cultural differences between what we have, I guess Western, would you call it the Western style, or we have what we like, and then Asian cultures and Middle Eastern cultures and all that sort of stuff. It can have a completely different angle or direction that sound can go, and makes them feel in certain ways.
And different scales and different instruments, and I guess that all kind of tonality and timbre and stuff all kind of plays into that, right?
Yeah. You ever think about playing around with different worldly instruments?
I mean, I do. Yeah, actually, recently I got this quite an interesting sound pack. Actually, it was like it's Amazonic, I think it's called, and it's all these really well recorded native instruments of people that live in that area. Yeah. And the cool thing about it is this is what the website says. I really hope this is the case, but they actually give like sort of 40 or 50% of the funds that they sell back to the communities that have recorded them, like the actual people that live there. So I thought that was kind of cool. It was a nice way to like feed the music production machine, but also give back to the people that were involved in it. That was kind of cool. So yeah, like I think I use anything that can make a sound basically, and quite often it's.
What about bagpipes? No shit. Sorry, I'm sorry. I lowered myself.
Is that because you're wearing an England top?
Yeah. Sorry.
Please, Scots were here. I don't know. Like, yeah. I mean, the thing is, you could probably make something quite interesting. Like, not just the sound, but I think a lot of the. I'm sort of thinking ahead here of where I've come to, but there's like John Hopkins I mentioned earlier on, and listened to a bunch of his interviews and whatnot. There was one in particular that really I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I tried that, and it was really interesting way it works. So, he'd quite often make something. And he's like, oh, this is kind of all right. It's like that. Okay, sounds okay, but it's not really interesting enough. And what he would do is he'd export the whole track as like a WAV, so it's just one single stereo file, and then put heaps of effects on it, mangle the shit out of it, reverse it, chop it all up, do all weird things, and then suddenly you'd get this like little section of complete dynamite that like you could never have made that. Like you just couldn't make it, and then suddenly strip that out and start a new track with just that little element. And like I've done that quite a lot actually with just sounds, mangling something to the point that it's completely unrecognizable, and that formulates the creation of like, oh, what could I layer on top of it? And then it becomes like a sort of layering thing. It's like, oh, I need something here, or some sort of distance or whatever it might be. And that's quite an interesting way to work, I think.
I think a lot of the electronic music tracks that you hear, they've got something like that. You're like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, that sort of draws you in a bit, like
interesting.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's a cool way of working, I think.
Yeah.
That's where you get the happy accents like you're talking about. Like you can't make that stuff. Well, I can.
So just sort of going into the future. So obviously, I don't want to say the pandemic's behind us, but the pandemic's behind us. Fuck it.
Positive.
Yeah. So what's exactly. So what's the future hold for NILA?
I guess more production really is the main thing. I've got a few gigs coming up at the start of next year. There's a local festival, Dimension. I think they're making a bit of a jump into the progressive sign, which is cool. So there's that, and there's another gig coming up that's not been confirmed yet, but more news on that. Follow my website. Plug. A good place to just find everything there in one place, but mainly production. Like I've got quite a few things, got a few remixes on the go, and a few collab projects as well. There's an Aussie guy with out in Melbourne, a guy called Sam Hopgood, who actually does film score as well. He's a really talented musician in his own right, and has been on some great labels like Celador Balance and a bunch of others as well. So our recent collab was on Sprout, and we've got some more work with him. So yeah, busy. A lot of stuff to finish. There's lots of stuff that I've started and not finished. But
well, of course, I mean, you work full time, right? So you've got a full time job as well as doing all this. Yeah. Where'd you find the time? And kids.
Yeah.
Where the fuck do you find the time?
I don't know. Like,
do you sleep?
Actually, on that, no, not particularly well at the moment. But, I don't know. It's a funny one. Like, I spend the majority of my free time in the studio, I guess, which does have its detriment to sleep. I definitely don't sleep particularly well.
Do you find, like, because obviously you're really passionate about it, do you find that you just get carried away and like you're sort of producing music and you look at your watch, it's fucking 3 a.m. and you're like, shit, I better
No. Luckily, like I'm pretty like disciplined in that. So it gets to like 11:30. I'm like, yeah, I should probably call it. One thing I do find quite annoying, and this seems to happen quite a lot. Finish work, I'm like super eager, like I can't wait to get in the studio, which is right here. I don't actually have to move, it's the same place. But I can start making music. I feel really inspired, and then I don't know, some hitch comes up and I spend half an hour fucking around fixing that, and then start making some stuff and just like, this is shit. I'm there for about 3 hours, and then just as I'm like, I should probably call it, and then like something happens, I'm like, there's something there, like, and then you like half an hour and I like frantically record like a few takes of some synths of like it was just that half an hour like pretty much was the guts of a track, and it's like, why can that not have come earlier on? And I think it's a big part of just like playing around and experimenting until something comes. Like, that's why I say I don't have this plan, I'm going to make this thing. It's like a trial and error thing. You know how to manipulate sounds, but which forces the accidents, but it's quite often that, like as I say, that last half an hour something comes up, and then I'll go back to the next day and finish it. But
I think it's an enviable position. You've got a passion. You're passionate for something, and you're doing it, and you're putting it together. I mean, it's hard sometimes, but at the same time, so many people don't have that.
True.
They just sit down and watch TV or play games.
And I'm grateful for it. I guess where I like selfishly think it'd be nice. Like, I feel that if I could do it like full time, I'd get really good at it. Right? It's just like anything. You're doing it every day for 8 hours a day. I'm bound I'd hope I'd get better at it. And like, you look at a lot of the artists that I kind of like aspire to, and maybe it's smoke and mirrors, I don't know, but they appear to be doing just that. They spend most of the time making music, and there's a reason they're really good at it. It's because they're doing it all the time.
But the thing is they're probably gigging, and that's where they get their money, right? So it's not really the production side of it that earns the money, it's the gigging. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, I don't know, there's a bit of a... It's funny, there's a few producers out there that I really, really rate. Like, as producers, they're amazing, really good. But I feel like they've kind of been forced into they must DJ as well. And, it's like an expectation, you're on a label, you need to tour, you need to DJ. And, they can mix, I'm not saying they can't mix, but it's quite safe mixing. It's like intro, outro, let it track build, let it drop, intro, outro. Like, there's no real like creative mixing there. It's quite safe. And sure, that works. Like, and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, but I guess what I'm coming to is I feel that, there's a bit of a sort of like forced push from society that you're expected that you should do all these things if you're a producer, or if you're a DJ, you must be producing. Like, and I don't necessarily feel that's true, but like, I guess the gigs drive the financial kind of requirement, and then the other time they spend in the studio doing what they're passionate about. Whereas I'm kind of a bit on the other side. Like, I do really like production, but I really like DJing. Like, I've been doing it for so long that I could literally do it in my sleep. But it's kind of like production is getting closer, but I definitely have to work harder. And sometimes it works really easy, and other times I'm just like, hit my head off the wall. This is shit. Like, what is this? What is this shit?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. And then there's other times I despair, and I'm just like, what's the point? Is there really any point in pushing anymore? And then the thing that stops me from giving up almost is it's like, well, I've pushed this far. Like, if you just stop now, what was the point in all that before? Like, so it's kind of, it's like I'm up and down like any other person. It's nothing like I get creative block as well. There's times I just can't write anything, not inspired, or it's like we're human, right?
Yeah.
It's just part of it.
Have you got just sort of? I think we're close to wrapping up.
Yep.
Have you? There's just two things I potentially want to ask you.
Oh,
One
no,
is,
here we
have
go.
you got? No. It's nothing wrong. No. Has there been a moment where you've played one of your own productions and you've just got a reaction that's kind of blown you away in a positive way, not in that shit?
Yeah, more recently. It's funny. I guess it's hard because the whole COVID thing, and I haven't had quite as many gigs. But
this could go back like years before COVID.
Yeah,
or whatever,
but
you know.
I didn't really play a lot of my music before
okay.
then. And it's come back to that thing. Like, I think it was a bit of a double thing, really. One, it was like I wasn't that into it, and also I kind of doubted it as well. And it was that sort of self-doubt. But you know, when you've got like a big DJ like Catania or whoever playing something, and you're like, oh, must be good enough. So like, a few of those tracks have played out, and they've gone down quite well, which has been cool. I wouldn't play it all the time. Honestly, there's just so much good music getting released all the time. Like, it staggers me to play the same music all the time. Doesn't make sense. Like, I think it's the DJ's job really to be pushing a sound. Like, if you can play a set with like 90% of the music nobody's ever heard, and they're like, that was fucking amazing, you've done your job. Like, versus, I remember that was a banger from the big tune is another banger. Like, it's kind of boring. It's kind of safe, right? It's not really pushing. You're not like cutting edge, I don't think, and I think that's really important. And I think maybe something that's missing here is like there's less of that like pushing to be unique and kind of just go with what's your art and just embrace it.
Music in general now, there's so many options for people to listen to thanks to Spotify and all those streaming services. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a big hater of that whole machine.
I was doubting myself bringing anything
No,
like that up.
I hate it. Like,
the reason why I do isn't, there's more that people are exposed to so many different types of music now. So, I think you're doing yourself an injustice if you don't explore that within your shows and the entertainment that you create to try and get more out there. And, people are open to different sounds now.
And of course, like, this double thing with Spotify, like, it exposes, like you say, artists to people that had never heard of them potentially. But I don't know, like, there's that recently they do every year. You get this, like, it's funny as an artist, you get access to your artist page, and they send you this big, like, it's like a big After Effects kind of composition. You can see it's just all flashy, and you're like, wow, it's your stats for the year. And you're like, I'm like looking at it, and it's like, you've had 5 bazillion plays, and you earned. Okay, I didn't get 5 bazillion. It's not even a number, but like, I wasn't like I got I don't know how many hundreds thousand, not even hundreds thousand, but anyway, I got some numbers. But I was really anti-posting it because, like, I was seeing some artists that were being. There was one artist that I resonate with. I think they had something like, I don't know. It's probably like 5 or 6 times the amounts I had. They had like, I don't know, 200,000 plays or something like that. It was a good number.
Yeah.
And they said they made under $300. And I'm thinking, right, so of that, like, even if like 50% of that number were all paying a subscription of $15 a month, $20, whatever it is. I'm not great at maths, but like, you do the numbers, and the artists that made the music. So in other words, the platform, if they didn't have the artist music, they'd have nothing, right? That's the bottom line. Without the music, they've got nothing. They've just got a platform. Yeah. Sure, they've done a lot of work to spread that platform, but like, this artist got very, very little, and I find that staggering. Like, there's a machine out there that could still make heaps of money. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be entitled to. They can do what they want, but surely if they're using content from people that have spent the time making it, that should come back to the artist in some like shape or form. That's like, some of these artists, that's their income. Like, I'm kind of fortunate. It's not my main source of income, and I don't know. I feel like some of these machines are just kind of really, they're just really squeezing every last drop out of artists. And I think as a result, the quality and the industry, everything kind of suffers because there's one very small group of people making a hell of a lot of money out of a lot of other people's work. And sorry, but I'm quite anti.
I was thinking about this about half an hour ago. I was like, do we bring up the Spotify?
Yeah, I don't know how appropriate it is for me to spit my view out there, but sorry, Spotify, you're just not my thing. Like,
As they delete your account.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's maybe in the early days, I guess, when it was a new thing, like, might have been really good, I guess. And like, and there's also this other thing about even the whole social media thing, just in general, the whole like the numbers thing. Like, you as an artist, it's really hard not to get sucked into it because like you hear of stories of people saying, you know, people only book you if you've got X number of thousands of followers, which is kind of rubbish. Yeah. Like, it's more about the engagement with your socials, right, which is important.
But the algorithms and all those sorts of things are about the numbers. You know, how many videos you're putting up, and it doesn't matter about the quality. Yeah. So people are just putting up hours of shit, just to get the algorithm working for them, and then you know they get pushed more and they get more followers and blah blah blah. It's a dirty cycle.
But even if you get like a bazillion followers, right? There's like 5 million followers following your page, and not one of them engages with your content. Are they really fans? I don't know. Like I'd rather have 10 people that are like follow me all the time and like, you know, go to my gigs, like buying my merch or whatever it is. You don't have any merch, but you know, like actually support you as an artist. And you know, there's a few platforms out there, like Mixcloud is one that seems to be doing some cool stuff. Like, although I've heard of rumors they're going to monetize something.
They have.
Is that like uploads? So you've got to pay to upload your stuff or something?
Yeah, basically they've gone to a sort of SoundCloud type.
Yeah, but like they started off with like you pay a fee to get a particular level, and part of that fee would go back to the artist, which I thought was kind of cool. That was kind of nice. And Patreon's another one, and Bandcamp. There's a bunch of them out there, but I don't know, it's really hard as an artist to like not get sucked into the, how do I get exposure if I'm not on all these platforms? And you spend time actually away from the core thing, which of your passion, which was making music, trying to like pedal all these wheels for like social media. I mean, like it's bonkers, but I've done it. Like I do it. It's kind of stupid.
Social media is really fucking time consuming,
right?
As well, isn't it? You know,
it's unhealthy as well, right?
Yeah. You're like, I think evolution will be that we grow massive thumbs in about 100 years because they're still fucking doing this all the time.
Or really small thumbs.
A bit quicker. But yeah, I mean, they've whole fed in that whole psychology of that dopamine release of like me, like, and it's really unhealthy. Like, I think.
Yeah, I think you get sort of into the scrolling thing, but sooner or later there'll be something I'm interested in. But you're scrolling for all the shit, and then eventually you're like, there must be something. Like half an hour later, the next thing I'm going to be interested in.
I'll just do 5 more times.
Oh, what's really shit is that you get fed things that are done by an algorithm. So if you see one thing on Facebook and you go, I don't like Meghan Markle, I'm going to click on this one thing and have a look. And then for the next 3 years, it's just bombarded with that crap. And you're like, why?
Yeah,
why?
right.
Why is this? Why? And it's the same with the music. You listen to a few on Spotify, they feed you what you know, most commonly listen to or whatever. And you just get the same stuff over and over again, and you're creating a bubble.
And you go through there, and like something like Darude's playing here, and your thumb actually twitches and clicks into that, and then the Darude thing comes up, and you're like, "Fuck, I hate Darude, I hate Sandstorm," and then you're off it, and then you're scrolling up. Oh fuck, the Fender Boys are in here, and I'm like scrolling past again. Holy shit!
You're a fanboy,
you get sucked in.
Yeah. Well, you got to press a little arrow, so you get that little pop down. You get a little arrow in the corner. The X, right? And it's tiny, and you just get the X, and then you're not quite, and you hit the ad, and you fuck it.
No, it's all evil stuff. It must be like I just.
But we need it.
Oh, do we? But we do.
We do.
I
hate to say it, we fucking do. You know.
I'm talking to a lot of people recently, and that life changing. After the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, people are moving to smaller towns and getting away from social media.
That's it. Like, do you remember, like, as a kid, right? You remember, like, you have to speak to people, right? Like, you know, that art of, like, conversation where, like, especially, I think, you know, as a young, like, buck trying to, like, you go out town, try your luck with some of the girls there, you know, and, like, you had to go and speak to them. You could, like, swipe left and swipe right. It was like, you had to use a bit of charm and a bit of, like, you know, like, a bit of, like, communication skill to kind of get that across. And
but it's built character.
Yeah.
It built character.
Right.
It was like, I'm going to go up to her. I have no idea who she is. She has no idea who I am. I'm going.
But
I failed.
And then you go.
I've been a man for it.
And you go and you go, shit, I'll do it next time.
But even that, right? Like, you think of how that affects, like, the younger generation. If they're going to grow up with this, like screening interaction before they even decide to interact, like, I feel that's really dangerous, Like...
I think one of the big things too, I heard this somewhere recently, is that the problem with social media and all that sort of thing is that people don't see the reaction that they give somebody else. So if someone writes something up online and you write, you're a cunt. And you know, if you say it to somebody's face, like when we were kids, you had to say it to someone's face,
Right.
you know, you're a dick.
Yeah.
And then they would cry, and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel very nice.
Or punch you.
I feel, or
Right,
punch me.
yeah,
And it's not
Yeah.
good. But when you see something and you write to someone, you're a dick. Oh, I feel quite good about that. Because you can't see the reaction that it's doing. And
That's
it's
interesting.
tearing us apart.
It's the equivalent to the snidey kid who goes up to you and goes, "You're a dick," and then runs off.
Hides behind the corner and goes, fuck, I'm proud of myself.
You're a wanker.
You're a wanker.
Who said that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I heard this somewhere recently. I thought that's a very good point. It's like we're getting all these narcissistic knobbins, you know, and they're not getting, they're not seeing the repercussions of their actions, and then they just keep getting bigger.
And like, sorry, labour this, but it filters into the dance scene, right? Like, I remember going to clubs in the UK when I was like a bopper, you know, I was tiny, and you'd dance. You wouldn't face in any particular. You'd face dancing your mates. You just dance for your mates. You didn't even know where the DJ was. That was another thing. It'd be up in a box somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, and there was none of this like capture the moment on your phone in a picture. It was like you just like it actually is killing like the environment because you're like rather than being immersed in it. It's like I remember I'm going over the place here, but when I used to film and like you'd be trying to capture something cool like an octopus or a shark or whatever. You get so engrossed in capturing the frame and like composition, yada yada yada. You kind of lose the actual experience of seeing the animal in the water because you're so focused on the film and you're not actually like, wow, look at that. I mean, of course you're looking at it, but your focus is elsewhere. And I think social media and that whole Instagram, hey, look at me, that's a similar kind of thing. You're like, rather than actually being present and like absorbing what you're part of, you're just more about, hey, look, I'm having a really good time. Look, That's kind of weird, right? Is that just me?
I have to say that I'm not just saying this. Is that I rarely take photos when I'm out. Like, and I look through my phone and I've got. I went to like Oro, you know, like in 2016. I got 0 photos, but I always think that in my memory I've got those memories, and that reminds me of it. Yeah, like because I've taken in everything. It was an amazing festival. Well, it was good once Dave Seaman came on, and then from that point onwards. But it was a really unique festival because it was in Wood Hill, and it was a beautiful setting. And
is that when Orbital came out as well?
It was
Underworld,
and then it was one half of Orbital DJing. Was it Phil Hartnell?
Yeah.
And and Underworld were amazing, but. A lot of people, they just they insist on taking loads of photos of the event, but like I just feel that you miss something, and I can't be asked to be honest with you.
Well, the one that gets me is recording it.
Yeah, what's the point in
Why are
that?
you filming it? You're not going to look back on that, really.
And the
You
quality
might
is
do it
shit.
Yeah, exactly.
terrible.
God, that
Hear
was
the
so the sound was so awesome there. Listen to this. Was it?
The bit that cracks me up is you see these like videos, much like you're saying, you like there's this person, they're like, oh look at this, and you're like, I can't see it. It's just like. Sounds like distorted audio and like equally distorted video. Like,
It's like,
what are you showing me?
Born Slippy never sounded so good.
Exactly.
One of the things that happened where I really realised we were in a downhill slope was when I was filming at a gig. And I'm filming the gig and I turn around to film the people and the people are filming me with the cameras filming me. I'm like,
Right.
we're fucked.
Yeah, that is weird.
So weird. Shall we wrap it there then?
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Very good.
Yeah, it's enough of the old bastards talking shit.
Yeah, right.
I reckon. That was great. That was brilliant. Nick Cavendish, thank you very
My
much.
pleasure. Thanks for having me on
dropping
and
by.
listening to my drivel.
That's been awesome.
No, it's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely put links to all of your socials and all that kind of stuff we just talked about.
Jump onto social media.
Hypocrite, right? Yeah.
Get that like it, man.
I know.
And,
Funny.
yeah, man. Thank you very much. Awesome.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, bro. Thank you.
So, good one.
Nice one. Thank
Cheers.
you.